They were lowering my son's casket into the ground when she leaned in close behind me, like she was offering comfort, and whispered, "You have a week to get out." Her fingers were still on my shoulder, gentle, almost maternal, like she was consoling me. But I knew better. I didn't turn around. I didn't cry. I just sat there frozen, gripping the funeral program in my lap until the edge tore under my thumb. The priest kept talking about peace and closure, but my son, my only child, Aaron, was gone. 33. A heart attack. Just like that. And now, as his wife Madison sniffled into a tissue and played the grieving widow in her perfectly tailored black dress, she was already working to erase me from the home I helped them buy. The home I'd lived in for 7 years. The home my son promised would always be mine too. This is not a story about grief. This is a story about what happens after the flowers fade. About how quickly love can turn into eviction. How some people can turn your worst day into a power play. And how, with one lost document, one whispered lie, and one forged signature, I nearly lost everything. But I didn't. Because what Madison didn't count on was that I kept receipts. And I don't give up quietly. After the funeral, the house was full, neighbors, coworkers, church folks dropping off casseroles. Madison was the picture of grace, hosting in heels, clinking glasses, and offering polite smiles like she was starring in her own daytime drama. I stood in the kitchen like a ghost, watching it all unfold. I'd lived in that house since Aaron and Madison bought it 7 years ago. When Aaron lost his job, I stepped in with a cashier's check to help with the down payment. No hesitation. No conditions. Just a mother helping her only son build a life. And he insisted, my name go on the deed. This will always be your home too, Mom. But now, less than 72 hours after burying him, I was invisible. The family photos by the staircase? Gone. His army medal case? Removed. His recliner in the living room? Replaced with a new chair that looked like it came from a fake designer catalog. Madison walked through the house like she was staging it for sale. When I finally retreated to my room that night, the one I'd slept in for years, I found the door already open. The lamp was unplugged. The drawers half empty. My jewelry box missing. A plastic bin in the closet was labeled Mom's stuff. I walked out, heart pounding. She was at the dining table, sipping wine with her phone in hand. "Did you move my things?" She looked up, slow and casual. "Just organizing. There's a moving company I can call when you're ready." I asked where my jewelry was. She smiled. "Some of it's in the safe. You wouldn't want anything to get lost, would you?" When I reminded her I never asked her to touch my things, she said, "Aaron and I talked about this. We figured you'd move back to your sister's." "I don't have a sister." "She knows that." I told her this was my home. She said it was his home. And that he would have wanted her to have space to grieve. Then she picked up her phone again, and I was dismissed. I didn't fight. I just walked back to my room, trying to keep my hands from shaking. I checked every drawer, every box. The small envelope of emergency cash I kept? Gone. Prescription bottle? Gone. But the worst of it? The deed. The document Aaron and I kept together, the one with both our names, gone. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid there in the dark, thinking about every birthday cake, every scraped knee, every midnight fever I stayed up nursing. I thought about how I'd given that woman everything I had, including my trust. And now she was dismantling me like an old lamp she didn't want in her new living room. By morning, She was making coffee like nothing had happened. "Morning," she said. "Just looking into some quotes for movers." I told her I hadn't asked for movers. She gave that tight little smile again. "Right, but you said you wanted to handle things on your timeline." I figured it might help. That was her specialty, making domination sound like help. I went to the attic. Erin used to keep everything: tax records, insurance policies, folders labeled with neat handwriting. After an hour digging through dust and boxes, I found it. A manila envelope marked Final Deed. I opened it on the attic floor, right there under a single dusty bulb. And I saw it. My name. My signature. Erin's. Dated. Notarized. Filed. She had tried to erase me. But I had proof. When I climbed down, Madison was waiting at the bottom of the ladder. "Looking for something?" I smiled calmly. "Just old paperwork. Nothing important." She gave a tight smile. I could see it in her eyes. She knew. She knew she'd lost the upper hand. But she still had one last card to play. Or so she thought. That night, Madison knocked on my door with 2 glasses of wine in hand. I figured we should talk. Clear the air. She sat across from me on the couch like a friend trying to smooth things over. Her voice was soft, carefully measured. "Erin always said this house was for us, for our future family. I don't want things to get ugly. I just want to move forward." I didn't say a word. I just looked at her wedding band, still on her left hand like it meant something. "You understand, right?" I asked. "Have you spoken to a lawyer?" Her lips twitched. "No. I didn't think it was necessary." I smiled, slow and cold. "Maybe it is." She stiffened. "Are you threatening me?" "No," I replied. "Just thinking out loud." She walked away like we hadn't just exchanged quiet declarations of war. The next morning, I printed copies of the deed, scanned it, and backed it up to a cloud folder labeled for lawyer only. Then I drove to Mr. Holt's office and handed him everything: photos, records, the deed. He nodded as he flipped through the pages. "She has no legal standing," he said. "You've lived there 7 years, co-signed the deed, and have proof of contribution. If she files any eviction claim, she'll lose." He advised me to stay calm, gather everything, and let him handle the next moves. He wasn't just building a defense, he was preparing for a takedown. When I returned home, Madison was already moving boxes in the garage. "Just getting rid of junk. Hope that's okay." I didn't reply. Instead, I checked my locked nightstand drawer, one she'd never touched before. It was now sealed. I pried it open with a screwdriver and found my medication and cash envelope missing. She was sending a message. No privacy. No safety. Only control. That night, I heard footsteps outside my room. Slow. Intentional. No knock. Just presence. The next morning, the power blinked out, exactly 1 minute. A scare tactic. I didn't bite. I made coffee. I read the paper. And I waited. 3 days later, she threw a grief gathering. Invited friends. Co-workers. Pilates girls. She handed out wine and hors d'oeuvres like it was an engagement party. I stood in the back, watching her make speeches about Erin's light and generosity. When someone asked how I was doing, I simply said, "As well as one can be, given I still live here." They blinked. Confused. Oh. Madison said this was her house. I smiled. Easy mistake. Later, Madison pulled me into the hallway. Are you trying to start something? I answered a question honestly. These people don't need to hear about paperwork. Then don't throw a wine mixer in the house you're trying to erase him from. She leaned in close, too close, and hissed. You don't know how this works. I'll make sure you regret staying. Then she walked out like she hadn't just threatened me in the dark. That night, I saw something in her bag, a manila folder labeled doc copies, backup plan. While she showered, I looked through it. A forged will. A fake ultrasound photo. A file labeled e-signatures 2023. All planted. All meant to support the lie she was building. And then the next morning, she dropped the biggest bomb. She said she was pregnant. I wanted to wait until I was sure. I'm 8 or 9 weeks. Aaron had been dead 10. I asked how that was possible. Donor, she whispered. Aaron wanted me to have a piece of him. But I knew that was another lie. The dates didn't line up. The clinic name on the sonogram didn't match Aaron's timeline. She wasn't having his baby. She was creating a sympathy shield, a weapon for court. I sent everything to Mr. Holt. He said, "This helps us. If she's lying about this, we can request medical records. We now have fraud, motive, and timeline inconsistencies." I didn't confront her. I did laundry. I cleaned bathrooms. And I waited. Because sometimes, the most powerful response is none at all. Friday morning, I found a manila envelope slid under my bedroom door. Typed. No legal stamp. No court seal. Just a page that read, "You have 48 hours to vacate the premises due to emotional instability and personal threats." At the bottom, one last line made my blood freeze. Failure to vacate may result in law enforcement involvement and potential elder neglect claims. Elder neglect. That was the card she'd decided to play now. She was trying to paint me as unstable. Dangerous. A threat to her and her imaginary baby. Not because I had done anything wrong, but because she thought fear would make me run. But instead of panicking, I folded the paper, slid it into my evidence folder, and drove straight to Mr. Holt. No appointment. No hesitation. When I handed it to him, he chuckled, dry and grim. "She's accusing you of elder neglect, while she's been documenting emotional harassment, removing your belongings, forging documents, and manipulating your finances." I nodded, barely breathing. Then I told him about the fake pregnancy timeline. The forged will. The sonogram from a different clinic. The overheard phone calls. He didn't blink. "We're past civil conflict now," he said. "This is pre-fraud litigation territory. What's the fastest way to prove it?" I asked. "We request discovery. Digital records. Email logs. Medical files. Financial submissions. If we tie her name to even one falsified record, she's done." That afternoon, I made 3 bound copies of everything. The original deed with my name. The refinance documents. The fake ultrasound photo. The eviction notice. The forged will. I labeled each binder. Case file, Madison. 1 went to Holt. 1 in my bank safe deposit box. And 1 under the floorboard in my closet, where she'd never find it. When I came home, Madison was on a video call, laughing about a real estate flip. "Yeah, I'll have full access to the place in 2 weeks tops." She was planning to sell the house. I stepped into the room just long enough for her to see me. Didn't speak. Just let her feel the wall of silence I'd built around her. She ended the call and turned to me. "Do you need something?" "Just a heads up," I said. "If another envelope shows up, make sure it has a court stamp. Anything else goes straight to my attorney." She blinked like I'd slapped her. "Are you threatening me?" "You started the paperwork war," I said. "I'm just keeping mine legal." That night, I logged into Aaron's old email account, the one I helped him set up years ago. Password still worked. Inside was a folder titled Estate. And there it was, a will dated 1 week before his death. Signed. Stamped. Except the signature wasn't his. And the notary seal was copied. Worse, the file's metadata showed it had been edited from Madison's laptop. I printed it and emailed it to Holt. "She forged his will," I wrote. He called me before I even finished brushing my teeth. "We're filing today." That was it. The line had been crossed. He filed a motion to freeze any property transfers, a fraud alert in probate court, and a protective notice to stop her from selling the house. And from now on, the court would speak for me. That afternoon, a process server arrived at our house. Right on cue, Madison stepped onto the porch with shopping bags in hand. "Madison K?" "Yes." "You've been served. Probate fraud. Property injunction." She stood frozen, eyes scanning the pages. "What is this? What the hell is this?" I stood behind the window, calm. "What did you tell them?" she shouted. "I didn't tell them anything," I replied. "The documents did." She slammed into the kitchen, muttering, "I'll fix this. This isn't happening." But it was. Because the next morning, the court confirmed co-ownership in writing. And she knew it. She felt it. She tried to be friendly that day. "Want to shop for baby things together?" "No," I said. "Are we good?" "We'll see." And just like that, her game was over. But the real twist hadn't even happened yet. 2 days later, Madison hosted what she called a grief gathering for Aaron's friends and coworkers. She announced it casually over coffee, like it was brunch, not a funeral follow-up. "Just a little closure," she said, pouring almond milk into her mug while ignoring the second cup I'd placed next to it. She didn't ask me to help prep. Fine. She barely acknowledged me that week, except to say, "Keep the guest bathroom clean. And please avoid any personal topics if you talk to anyone." So I didn't. Instead, I watched. Watched her restock Aaron's old bar cart like a party prop. Watched her arrange hors d'oeuvres like it was an open house. And when guests arrived, she floated through the room in a sleek black dress, making toasts about Aaron's generosity and light. I stood in the back. Silent. Because I'd seen her throw out his old books. Remove his photos. Strip his name from the walls. One of Aaron's coworkers, Kyle, gave me a hug. "He talked about you all the time," he whispered. "Said you were the one person who never left him." I almost cried. Later, someone asked me, "How are you holding up?" "As well as I can, considering I still live here." They blinked. "Oh." I thought she said it was her house. I just smiled. Easy mistake. I caught Madison watching me from across the room. Still smiling, but her eyes were tight, calculating. After things quieted, she cornered me in the hallway. "Are you trying to start something?" I answered a question honestly. These people are here to support me, Ellen. Then maybe don't throw a wine mixer while you erase his memory. She flushed. If you don't want to be here, you're free to leave. I smiled. I'm not going anywhere. Then she leaned in close, whispered through gritted teeth. You think you're clever. But I know how this works. I'll make sure you regret staying. And just like she had at the funeral, she turned and floated back into the crowd. But that night, I saw something strange. A man, mid-40s, shaved head, designer jacket, watched me for too long. He spoke briefly to Madison, then left early. Something about him stuck with me. After everyone left, Madison cleaned in silence. At midnight, I walked past the guest room and stopped cold. Her tote bag was open. Inside, a manila folder labeled doc copies, backup plan. I took a photo. Waited until I heard her in the shower. Then I opened the tote. Inside, a folder marked house timeline. One labeled e-signatures 2023. A printout of a will screenshot with Aaron's signature, dated March 4th. Aaron died February 2nd. Metadata said the file was created on her laptop. That was the moment I realized. She hadn't just lied. She had fabricated Aaron's entire estate plan. I took photos of everything and sent them to Mr. Holt. We need to talk. The next morning, Madison put on another act. Quiet crying in the kitchen. A robe. A tissue. Sometimes it just hits me all over again, she said, dabbing her eyes. Then, she placed a hand on her stomach. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure. I'm pregnant, Ellen. My spine stiffened. I couldn't breathe. How far along? I asked. 8, maybe 9 weeks. But Aaron had been gone 10. She gently placed a sonogram photo on the table like a trump card. I picked it up. The date said 4 weeks ago. A new clinic. Her name printed at the bottom. Aaron's name nowhere. I used a donor, she said. Aaron and I had discussed it, just in case. But I knew Aaron. He would have told me. This wasn't legacy. It was leverage. A way to build a narrative. Grieving pregnant widow forced to share her home with an emotionally unstable mother-in-law. I said nothing. She smiled, thinking I had folded. But the second she left the room, I matched the sonogram date with the will file from her tote. 4 days apart. I forwarded both to Holt with one message. She's lying. He called within the hour. This helps us. If she's claiming dependency, we can request full medical disclosure. What if she faked the whole thing? Then it's fraud. And if you keep documenting calmly, we'll win before trial. And so I stayed silent. She started dropping phrases like, the baby will need so much space. It's going to be hard raising a child in a hostile environment. Each time, she looked at me like a poker player, waiting for me to flinch. I didn't. But that Friday, she tried to force my hand. A new 48-hour eviction notice under my door. Typed. False. Claiming emotional threats and potential elder instability. But this time, I didn't flinch. I folded it slowly, added it to my folder, and drove it straight to Mr. Holt. And by the time I got home, everything had changed. We had proof of forgery, falsified medical claims, illegal eviction tactics, and a manipulated will with digital traces back to her laptop. The court granted an injunction, froze all property claims, and set a hearing date. And when the process server handed Madison the papers at our front door, I didn't say a word. Because I didn't have to. The law was finally louder than her lies. Madison stood on the porch staring at the envelope like it was made of fire. She opened it, scanned the first page, then the second, and whispered, "No. No. No." Then louder. "She's lying. This is all lies." She turned to me, her face flushed with fury. "What did you tell them?" I stood calmly. "I didn't tell them anything. The documents did." She threw the envelope onto the floor and stormed into the kitchen, muttering like she could somehow undo it all by sheer force of denial. But the damage was done. The court had seen enough. And they were moving. The next morning, I found her pacing the front yard on the phone. "Just get me a lawyer who knows how to bury this." A pause. "I don't care what it costs. She's just an old woman." I stood on the porch, arms crossed, and let her know I'd heard every word. Her face flickered, caught in a moment of reality. 2 days later, we were in court. Madison wore a cream blazer. She carried her fake sonogram photo like a shield. Her lawyer tried to spin the usual narrative: grief, widowhood, motherhood. But Holt cut through it like glass. He submitted. Side-by-side signature comparisons, real versus forged. Metadata proving Madison created the will. Deed records in my name and Aaron's, untouched. Refinance documents excluding Madison completely. And then, he dropped the final hammer, a timeline of the false pregnancy and the eviction threat. The judge leaned forward, flipping through the files. "Counselor, this is extremely clear." Madison's shoulders collapsed. Her face twitched like she wanted to scream. Then came the ruling. All eviction claims, void. Property co-ownership, restored. Will, under fraud investigation. Her lawyer whispered something. She whipped her head toward him like he'd betrayed her. I stayed silent. Because it wasn't a victory lap. It was just the truth, finally spoken aloud. When we left the courthouse, Holt turned to me and said, "Now we wait, either she pushes back, or she packs her bags." And that afternoon, I got an email from the court confirming full legal recognition of my ownership. No fireworks. Just peace. The next morning, Madison was dressed in black. Sitting at the table with a legal pad full of scribbled numbers. Her coffee untouched. She didn't look up when I walked in. "You think you've won?" I poured my coffee without answering. "Just because a judge bought your little story." I turned. "It wasn't a story, Madison. It was the law." That cracked something. She stood so fast the chair screeched against the tile. "You don't get to steal everything from me. You tried to erase me from a life I helped build, with a forged will and a fake pregnancy." She froze. Then tried to pivot again. I was grieving. But it didn't land. "Not anymore." I said. "Pack your things. I'm giving you the same respect you never gave me. I'm not calling the sheriff. Yet." She opened her mouth to yell, then thought better of it. Grabbed her phone. Stormed out. That day, the house was silent. Not fearful. Not tense. Just still. Later, I went into Aaron's old room. Closed the door. Sat on the edge of the bed. Opened a drawer I hadn't dared touch since the funeral. Inside was a single folded note. Aaron's handwriting. "If anything happens to me, I'm sorry. Line after line of guilt, regret, and apology. She made me choose sides. I should have told you everything. Don't let her take everything. This house was always ours. Do what you have to do, Mom. I scanned it. Saved it. Filed it. Because that letter was the final word. That evening, Madison returned. Eyes red. Face hard. You'll regret this. I'll go to the press. I'll tell them you bullied a grieving widow. I said. Then I'll show them the sonogram dates. The will metadata. And the letter Erin left me. She paled. You're bluffing. Try me. She turned and slammed her door. 2 days later, the hallway outside her room was stacked with boxes. Labeled, half-sealed, taped in a rush. That morning, she stood at the door with her last bag. You don't have to do this. Neither did you. She blinked, stunned. Like she expected a tearful plea. Where am I supposed to go? Anywhere that isn't here. And I closed the door. Not to be cruel. To be finished. I watched from the window as she stood frozen for a full minute, then finally left. No goodbye. No glance back. Just the sound of gravel under her tires. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just felt done. That night, I walked into the living room. And there it was, a silver flash drive. Unlabeled. Left on the coffee table like bait. My stomach turned. Madison never left things behind by accident. I plugged it into Erin's old laptop. One file. No password. A grainy video. Madison, staring into the webcam. If you're watching this, then I'm either gone or you think you've won. Her voice was calm. Smug. You were never meant to stay here forever, Ellen. You were just a placeholder. Then, Erin wanted to ask you to leave. He just didn't have the guts. I paused the video. But I already knew the truth. Erin's letter said it all. I hit play again. He was weak. He couldn't cut the cord. So I had to do it for him. She ended with, You can keep the house, Ellen. But you'll never forget this. And I smiled. Not out of anger. But because I had the thing she could never fake. Erin's handwritten note. I ejected the flash drive. Deleted the file. And for the first time since the funeral, I unpacked the last of my things. Put Erin's photo back on the hallway shelf. Lit a candle. And sat at the table. Not lonely. Just still. Just free. Underscore 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 underscore. Loudspeaker. Now I want to hear from you. Backhand index pointing right. What would you have done in Ellen's place? Backhand index pointing right. Have you or someone you know ever faced something similar? Share it below. Backhand index pointing right. Which story should we uncover next? Let us know. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your voice matters, and your story might be the next one we tell.